Welcome back to Sketchy Watercolor. I wanted to keep this video nice and short and pretty much just talk about the painting process I went through and some of the materials. I do like doing portraits, but it has been a little while and I'm a bit rusty, but I'm going to do more of these because it's fun. This is gouache. So gouache is a type of watercolor that is opaque and actually used to be really common in illustration. So it's pretty cool. It's very easy to work with. I don't know if it's necessarily easy to make it do what you want it to do, which is part of the practice. But I started with a line drawing here, and what I did was I gridded the paper in the exact ratio that my reference photo came from, and then basically just measured and used the grid to get things pretty precise. If you saw the sketch that I posted before or just at the very beginning of this video, you can see it wasn't quite perfect, and that was much more freehand. But I wanted to try and get a nice likeness in the portrait, so I pulled all the stops and gridded and measured and all that stuff. After the line drawing, the next step I did was to make an underpainting. And part of having an underpainting, or part of the reason for it, is just so, one, you can kind of go back and see where you've painted and where you haven't. And also to knock back the white. Now, I chose kind of the orangey yellow as an opposite to one of the more dominant colors in the photo, which is the blue on the face. And that's coming from a light in the studio where this picture was taken. And so it's not necessarily a natural color, which might make it a bit more challenging when you go through and try and learn to paint, say, a natural face in a natural setting. So it's not necessarily what this is, but the color effects are cool. So I tried to keep this very simple, and I tried to have a basic goal for this painting of having more natural looking transitions of the different color planes and the different value planes. I tend to make my darks too dark and my lights too light, and I wanted to fix that for this and work towards a style of practice that helps me improve the subtlety that you need in portraiture. So I also kept the paints and the brushes simple, used large brushes for most of it. Most of this is done with a 1/2-inch flat brush. And I just had yellow ochre, bright and a crimson red, and some burnt sienna, yellow ochre. Kept it pretty simple, but what this particular project showed me was, I think I want to test out doing portraits with the Zorn palette and see if that doesn't force me to learn to understand the reds in skin tone better. It's tough because, one, this is working from a reference, and I did switch to using like my phone instead of basically a poor printout, so I could get really nice color reference, but it's still not the same, and it's also hard to build that skill level in seeing the different relationships in color. So I think especially starting with that pretty bright yellow background made it hard to want to commit to putting any reds into the face. That was not necessarily helped by the fact that I did run out of white gouache at some point, and so the only white I did have was this pearl rose gouache, and it's got these little sparkles in it, which just kind of look terrible, and it's bad. But it did sort of kind of make sense because in the reference, this woman is wearing a pearl necklace, so kind of worked out. Another thing I tried to do was to really try and sculpt out in blockier forms things like the hands and different major planes of the face to force myself to use less brush strokes and hopefully make things cleaner and easier to do. And I think it did work to a degree. I ended up liking how the hand turned out, and it's kind of amazing how a small number of brush strokes can turn out to look like the form you're trying to portray by making them more generally accurate rather than spot on perfect. It's almost like the more time you spend on it, the more you screw it up. So keeping it simple. If you like it or have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll check those. And if you like it, check out my channel. I've got a handful of other videos, but I will be doing more like this as well. Thanks.